Anytime you do something new and novel, and we've got so many, you get these emails too. There's so many young advisors coming into our industry, and they're like, I can almost like clockwork, like it's 4 to 12 months after they start, I'll get an email that says, I didn't know this is what it was like. They go to work for an incumbent big firm or whatever, and they're like, oh, they come out of some of these amazing financial planning programs, like ready to change the world and really have an impact in this service mindset. And then they get plugged into some relatively sales oriented job and they're disappointed and they're thinking about leaving. And my message is always like, no, go do the thing you thought. Like if you have to for a couple of years, play chess, that's fine, but keep a hold of that thing. Well, that thing is scary, like doing it a little different than the way it's always been done. And as soon as you bump up against anything that you're going to do that's new and novel, especially if there's not necessarily an exact model for it, like how crazy, remember like James Osborne, I'm sure he's been on the Success podcast. You know the number.
I don't remember the number. But he has been on Advisor Success. So
yeah, and how crazy is it that James decides who gave him permission to decide that he could build a business around only 75 clients with a flat retainer? We know Carolyn, like we could just go on and on about these stories. Well, all of them have bumped up against this thing. I got the chance to meet with a performance coach for people in businesses. I was meeting with one and I was telling him about this feeling I would get. Almost paralyzing, but not paralyzing. Almost just like, oh, and I'm testing my chest right now because I could feel it in my chest. I can even feel it right now. And I was like, it's this fear that someone's going to find out, right? Like I'm just a kid from the hills in Utah who gave me permission to do this thing. And she's like, that has a name. This is the first time I learned this. This is really cool. And I can't remember 2012, 2013. So I've been writing for the Times for a while. The book had come out. And I was like, oh, why every time I gave a speaking engagement, why do I feel this tightness in my chest? And she's like, well, that has a name. I was like, oh, what? And I remember the thought when somebody told me it had a name. I was like, if it has a name, other people must have felt it. Like, how great is it to know that it has a name? And she's like, it's called imposter syndrome. I was like, what? Tell me about it. So I went down this rabbit hole of researching it. The technical definition is having a difficult time internalizing our own value. Despite, and there's an important element, despite external evidence to the contrary, right? So you have a relatively decent record of success, and it may not be in the same thing. That's where the new and novel part comes from. It may be that, you've had success in school and now you're trying to have success in your job and you think that they don't translate.
Yep.
But you've got external evidence to the contrary that you know how to do things and you're having a hard time internalizing it. That's imposter syndrome. And it doesn't go away with success. In fact, most of the research says it not only does it not go away, sometimes it gets worse. And I think that's because you have a longer way to fall, right? Like as you have success, you're looking down saying, oh, if it happens now, that's a long ways to fall, right? So it doesn't go away. There is some evidence that it's a bigger challenge, and that's not a sexist statement. It's right out of the literature, right? Like some evidence that it's a bigger challenge with women than it is with men, and that's purely because men typically have an overconfidence problem. So the fact that
it's hard to have an imposter syndrome problem if you're going to have an overconfidence problem.
It's hard to have an imposter problem if you think you're the master of the universe, right? Like, so it's not a good reason that it's the fact that it's a slightly larger problem with women than it is with men is actually a compliment, not a negative thing, right? So
just because women are actually self-aware and we men just like,
well, yeah, we typically
bull ourselves into stuff.
Yeah, and the literature again is relatively clear on this, that overconfidence is a problem for both genders, but it's a stronger problem for men than it is for women. So those are a couple of just the factual things. And the level of imposter syndrome I'm talking about here, there is, I think the word syndrome is even a challenge here, because there are some people that it's like a real, like it's actually paralyzing. And I'm not talking about that. And I kind of want to be clear about that. I don't know what to do about that. Mm-hmm. That's beyond the scope of anything I know about. I just know about this almost paralyzing fear. And the word we use there is imposter syndrome. Hey, it's Carl here. Thought I'd just take a second after you watch that clip with Michael and I, to tell you about something that I think is amazing. And I know I'm biased, but we've built this thing over at the Society of Advice. We call it the membership. And I want to be super clear about what it is. I don't know about you, but there are very few times on my calendar that are dedicated times to think about the impact I make on the world, right? To think about the impact I want my work to make, to take a step back or up, right? And think about the business because I'm so busy working in the business. Well, that's what we built the membership for. We meet once a month, 90 minutes. The key here is to dedicate it in your calendar. We already know the dates for months in advance, right? You put it in your calendar, you come, all distractions off, right? Camera on. And what you're going to do is listen to a private conversation that you could hear nowhere else between me and some super impactful person that I invite. Sometimes you'll know them. They're like world famous authors. Other times you'll have never heard of them, but I promise you they will knock your socks off, right? Like it's super impactful. So you come for 90 minutes, distractions off, camera on, ready to listen, ready to participate in this amazing chat with all the other advisors that are there. And guess what will happen to you? I'm telling you what will happen because I've seen it happen over and over and over. An insight, right? An idea. And we all know like one idea can change your life. That's what we're after. It's an idea factory over at the Society of Advice membership program. Guess what? I have an idea for you. Try it out. I want to make it easy on you. Click the link and check it out. It's a 7-day free trial of my membership program to see if you like it because I think you will. And let me know. Thanks, my friend.